Ani Kinawea. Super excited to be here to talk about one of my favorite things, which is the visioning wheel. Should I have this or not? I'll leave it. Yeah, visioning wheel is probably the coolest thing I've ever learned, coolest Anishinaabe teaching I've ever learned. Um, but anyway, before I get into it, just want to talk about. Oh, gotta get my thing set up here. Here we go. Something that's very close to health and safety professionals' hearts, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with this dude named Deming. W. Edwards Deming is really the grandfather of the quality movement and continuous improvement. And he was one of the people that helped pioneer this plan, do, check, act concept. And his whole idea was, before you can do anything, you got to sort of plan it out, and then you got to do it, and you got to check to make sure you've done it. And then you can, based on the check, make changes or pat yourself on the back type of deal. And it's kind of a central concept in health and safety as well as quality. We stole it right from the quality people. But I wanted to challenge this idea in front of all of you today. Now, I got those designations and stuff that Madison said. I'm a big fan of health and safety, but I'm not sure that this idea is quite correct. In fact, I think it's completely wrong. And my kids say it's kind of mid, which is, I don't know if they're still saying that, but that was a couple of years ago. They used to say mid a lot. My wife and I used to joke, do you mean mid-century modern? But anyways, they don't really say that too much anymore. Really, this is not the best way to achieve or sustain excellence, despite what every health and safety professional or quality professional will tell you. The best way is the Anishinaabe medicine wheel. So I'm sure you all know about the medicine wheel, but I'll just remind you, there's lots of teachings from our medicine wheel, 4 directions, the 4 seasons, the 4 aspects of being. Those are just a few of the many, many, many teachings that come from this baby, right? It has so many things built into it. We love things in fours, and Anishinaabe people really was kind of the co-pilot or the chat GBT of traditional times, if you will. But really, the most interesting of them is the visioning wheel. And whenever I speak in relation to truth and reconciliation, I always like to talk about truth as really expanding your knowledge, because your truth, we all have our own unique truths. Your truth is really your perspective, your worldview, your way of understanding things, right? And if you can increase your knowledge, you're going to expand that worldview and expand that perspective. And when I think about reconciliation, I really think that key to reconciliation is relationship forging, building good and healthy relationships. So the visioning wheel is a key concept in relation to truth and reconciliation, but it really has so many applications. It's really the best way to accomplish anything. And it was taught to me by my parents, my father especially. And when I got into health and safety, actually, he kind of gifted me this teaching. And I think he might have been teaching me elements of it my whole life. But when I came into this role, especially, he kind of sat me down and went over this entire wheel with me. So I want to take you through it. It is really, as I said, the path to effectively achieve any goal, the ultimate way to achieve any project or accomplish anything, really, health and safety or otherwise. And I want to really delve into and examine each of these quadrants. I'm going to, of course, start in the east, which is where we start as Anishinaabe people with vision. So I want to compare a couple of visions. A strong vision is so essential to achieving things in health and safety. So let's look at these 2 visions I have on the slide here. One, to be the global leader in rentable home entertainment by providing outstanding service, selection, convenience, and value, the blue one. And the red one is to become the best global entertainment distribution service. I don't know if anybody knows who those two companies are just based on the visions that I have up. Or anybody want to take a guess? Throw it in the chat if you have an idea what you think the blue and or the red is here. But very, very different visions for really a very similar, in the beginning, a very similar type of organization. Any guesses what they are? No, it's not Prime. Close though. The red one is Netflix, but the blue one's not Prime. Somebody else, actually. But when we look at these, really the blue one is kind of narrow. It's very focused, very pinpointed. No, it's not Disney either. It's not really a company anymore. That helps. Whereas the red one is so much more broader, so much more dynamic, so much more lofty, isn't it? It is Blockbuster. What's wrong with the Blockbuster's vision? One word, I think the rentable piece there, right? So narrow, isn't it? Blockbuster went, as we all know, went bankrupt mainly because of this. Well, it was poorly communicated as well, but a very narrow vision. Their complacency is really evident in the word be versus Netflix's become. Like we want to continue to grow. We're headed upwards. And Blockbuster's like, we want to just be this, right? Really, I don't know. Who needs innovation when you got late fees, I guess, is what Blockbuster might have been thinking. But that become is so much more forward thinking, so much more innovative. And I don't have to tell you the whole story, but I'm sure you remember Netflix went to Blockbuster. I don't know if anybody knows this part of the story in 2000 and said, hey, like, you want a 50% stake in our company? We can work together. And Blockbuster was like, no, we're not working with you. You know, you're nobody. You're not going to be anything. And I think you know the story from there. 12 years later, Netflix is booming. Blockbuster is bankrupt. And I guess it was because the Netflix vision didn't really fit with what Blockbuster was trying to achieve at the time, perhaps. But I guess hindsight is 2020. I'm sure you all know Netflix is the leading streaming service now, 250 million users or something like that. 50 million more than the next place, which is Amazon Prime. So shout out to the person who guessed Amazon or I guessed Prime, Caitlin. So an interesting way to think about vision from a health and safety context is thinking about your health and safety policy. Your policy statement is really your vision for health and safety. And really any policy statement that you have within a health and safety program, it's like, this is what we want to achieve. This is the sort of the lofty goal. Much different than a plan, right? We can talk about that in a second. I really had a hard time understanding vision versus plan and policy versus program when I was sort of newer in this role. But let's sort of break them down just so you understand it as well. Vision is much broader. At WSPS, we've had our current vision since 2018, but our plans change almost every year. And very recently, 3 years ago, our plan drastically changed in terms of the way we format our plan and the way we sort of align with the ministry's plan and everything like that. Vision is much more long-term. It sort of stays there as you work through your different things that you're trying to achieve. And it's meant to be inspiring. It's meant to be a guiding principle, a way to sort of provide a direction or a heading. Versus when we talk about a plan stays much more stable. Oh, I didn't know I was going to cover up the words there. Let me fix that. It's much more detailed. It sort of might outline some timelines, resources. It's really short term, right? It's like we are going to move and adjust and adapt, change as needed to achieve our vision with whatever our plan is, right? I missed that chat message. I miss Blockbuster too. I was a big fan of that. You know what's weird? What's funny? Think nothing about going to Blockbuster on a Friday and spending like $25 renting 3, 4 movies for the weekend or whatever every Friday, you know? And now, if I go on Prime and something's not free, I'll be like, $5. Well, I guess I'm not watching that movie. It's so funny how things have changed. But anyways, uh, sorry. Back to this. A vision points the way is a good way to kind of think of it, and a plan explains the steps to achieve that way. You know, someone from my organization, I don't want to name drop or anything, but I don't know how familiar any of you are with my organization, but I'll just call her Yodi Jung. Anyways, Yodi and I were discussing what a vision was, and she drew all these parallels between a vision and your why. And she talked about the importance of starting with why and the importance of starting with a vision. And I hope that some of you have seen that Simon Sinek TED Talk or know about that concept of start with why. And regardless of what you think about Simon Sinek, that start with why idea does resonate, doesn't it? But put a 1 in the chat if you have seen that TED Talk, or if you know what I'm talking about, start with why. Maybe you've read the book. If you haven't seen it, maybe I could get Yodi to send you the link. So our vision at WSPS is protecting the potential of Ontario's businesses and employees by keeping every worker healthy and safe every day. And as I said, this has been our vision since 2018. I think there's, yeah, I can put I'll make sure I put the link in the chat before the end for sure for you. See, so it's an awesome talk. It's only like 14 minutes or something, but it's amazing. This vision really is, as I said, our guiding principle here at WSPS. GovernWise is currently working on their vision. That's what Madison told me. But I could talk about their sister organization, Nokiwin. Nokiwin has a fairly lengthy vision that has sort of their values built into it. I took one element out of it and I want to share that one with you. That they promote improved health, safety, and well-being of Nokiwin member communities and beyond. And I like this one element. This is just one of 4 elements, actually, because it really kind of speaks to a key idea of what GovernWise is trying to do and what I am trying to do with each and every one of you that's on the call today. Yeah, absolutely, Helen. Love that. Now, does anybody at your organization, Rama, at Chippewas of Rama, which is where I'm from, I don't know if we call it a vision, motto, whatever you'd call it, but our sort of way we think about ourselves is a proud, progressive community. That's sort of like the mantra that we use at the Chippewas of Rama First Nation. So I'm curious if you have a vision, if your organization, your community, your tribal council, wherever you work, if you have a vision statement, and if you do, I would love to hear it. Or if you want to paraphrase it, throw it in the chat. You don't have to find the exact one and copy paste it or whatever, but I would love to know what your vision statement is if you have one. Or if you don't have a vision statement, I'd also love to know if you have a health and safety policy statement. So throw something in the chat if you have either or if you don't know them, but you know you have them, even just let me know that. That would be interesting to know for sure. Okay, well, well, you got to start with that's the important thing here. So if there's only one takeaway for today, this is it. You got to start with a good vision, whether it's for your organization or specific to health and safety. A vision is where you need to start, right? Awesome, love it, Amanda. Share it with me when you get it done. So really, a kind of a good way to think about vision then is it's really your compass. That's kind of the metaphor I like to think of when I think about vision. And once you have a vision, whether it's the organizational or the community or the First Nation vision, or the health and safety policy statement, if we're talking specifically about health and safety, it's then about thinking to yourself, how do I fit in to this vision? What am I trying to achieve at this organization or with respect to health and safety? And so that's my first call to action. Well, two call to actions really in one here. One, what is your, but get your organization to write a vision statement or a health and safety policy statement. Miigwech, Yolanda. Thank you, Helen, for sharing yours as well. Um, Once you have a strong vision statement and or health and safety policy statement, the next step for you as an individual is to really think, how am I contributing? What is my role? What am I doing within this vision statement? And I would compel you, this is my real first call to action, to write your own personal vision that really aligns with your organizational vision and or your health and safety policy statement. Now, you don't have to, be a wordsmith to craft a personal vision. Got to understand that. No one's going to see it but you. Okay. Don't worry about polishing it. Don't even worry about grammar or anything like that. Just scribble something out that really sort of aligns what you personally are doing in line with health and safety. We're talking about your health and safety policy statement, or in line with your organizational vision if you have an organizational vision. If you write that out, it really becomes your own sort of guiding principle, becomes your own compass, if you will. And you can revisit it and revise it as often as you need to. I have a personal vision. It's on my wall, actually. I live by it. I look at it, revise it. I try to revise it once a year. It's not quite once a year, but I try to revise it pretty regularly. Think, do I want to make any changes to this? Is this still what I want to think of as my compass, as my sort of guidance? Yeah, that's another way to do it. I love that, Kim. Having a more visual way of crafting your vision. So a vision board with different pictures and different infographics or icons and things like that on it can be very, very helpful to look at this board and think of, where am I heading to? What am I working towards? So again, I would love for you to write a personal vision statement, especially with regard to health and safety. What do you plan to do at your own organization to further health and safety? All right, let's move through to the next quadrant, which is personal favorite of mine out of all the quadrants within this visioning wheel, the relationship quadrant. After you have a clearly articulated, clearly established vision, the next step, according to our medicine wheel teaching, is to form a team, form a group that's going to help you achieve that vision and begin developing a relationship with that team. Nothing substantial is accomplished without first building a strong relationship among that group or among that team. When I first started in health and safety as a trainee, I remember this very vividly. The first morning of my very first day, this is 16 years ago now, something like that, 16 years ago. Yeah. My mentor sat down with me and explained to me, you know what, Drew, relationships are integral to what we do in health and safety. He said, you know, if we want to achieve anything, we have to start by building a relationship with everyone that we want to achieve that with. I look back on that conversation and, you know, I remember him asking me very specific questions about my family, about my hobbies and interests outside of work. And I realized that he was really building a relationship with me as he sort of imparted this onto me about why this is so important for a health and safety person. My father once told me that when he was young and my grandfather was chief, this is Ivan J. Douglas, pictures of him, my father's father, and he was chief for a number of years at Rama, like 8 years in one block, and then another few years, a couple of years later, or something like that. But, anyways, when my father was small, he would sometimes get dragged along to council meetings. And back then, chief and council was kind of a part-time role, and their meetings were in the evenings. And they would meet at a hall that no longer exists in Ram. Our new hall is on the grounds where the old hall was, but there were steps up as you went into this hall, like several steps. And my dad told me that it was like with a lot of reluctance, he'd be dragged along. And the meeting was supposed to start at 7, but everybody would stand on these steps and drink coffee and smoke cigarettes and chat and joke with each other and talk to each other and, you know, find out how everybody's families were and everything like that. And at the time, my dad said he never understood, why don't they just go in, get the meeting done? Because I want to go home. Like, he didn't want to sit there and listen to all this jibber jabber before they could go into the meeting and get their actual agenda items taken care of, their BCRs, motions, and whatever else, right? He realized when he was telling me this story, well, much later in life, he realized that they were really trying to nurture their own relationships through this teasing, through these stories that they were telling each other, through asking about each other's kids and neighbors. So that when the meeting actually began, they already knew how they were going to tackle many of the issues. They already had the context and the background and all the surrounding elements related to whatever the things were that were coming before them in the agenda. And last time I spoke, I talked about the strawberry teachings. And just in case you missed that, I'll just give a quick high level recap of them. Like a strawberry patch, we are all connected and we prosper because of these connections. Our community, our family, our friends, we really grow and achieve things because of our relationships with those who we are connected to. And how do you strengthen those relationships? Well, you need to spend time together. There's really no other way. You know, some visioning wheel, instead of using relationship here, they actually use time in this quadrant. They mean the same thing, but they mean you need to spend time with people that are trying to achieve the goal. There's no way to speed run, as my sons say, forging that relationship. You need to spend the time together. You need to get to know each other, right? And really, one of the things you can do to sort of improve it or slightly speed it up, I guess, is to be vulnerable with someone. Share with someone your own vulnerabilities. That is a way that you can strengthen a relationship much faster than just spending time together. Just like the strawberry teaches us in terms of its seeds on the outside, right? So how can we build and strengthen a relationship in addition to spending time together and or being vulnerable? Well, a few years ago at WSPS, we had a couple of speakers to our organization, and I just wanted to talk quickly about them. These two dudes named Randall Vickerson and Daniel Lewis. Uh, the first, Randall Vickerson, is really sort of a leadership and a collaboration coach. And Daniel Lewis was actually a rapper, turned into a tea sommelier. Sommelier? I don't know how to say that. But anyways, person at my organization took these are pics of them at our event. Um, and I just want to briefly tell you a couple of things that they taught me at that event a couple of years ago. Daniel Lewis, one of his big mantras is this concept of POP. And what he said about POP is that it is really the power of personality that makes an organization tick. He said everyone needs to share their real self with each other to build the best possible organization. You know, I think about my own self, who I am very much, I am who I am, no matter who I'm with. When you think about things like all of our whole spectrum of emotions, like fear or excitement, I think there's this weird stigma or thought in the westernized corporate world, not so much in a First Nation, that it's not okay to share that stuff. You got to kind of mask yourself in terms of fear and excitement, especially because that's not professional. Like it's, is it professional to share fear and excitement? I hope so to some extent because I would be the most unprofessional employee at WSPS if it wasn't. But really, I think it's about intense anger or maybe extreme frustration. Those things maybe not okay to share with your colleagues and coworkers, maybe upwards to your supervisor or whoever. But anyways, power of personality is about authenticity. When you are yourself, you really become much more relatable. And when you're relatable, that's when you can build relationships with others with very little effort. Right? Now, Randall Vickerson taught me that, advanced collaboration and he talks all about how do you collaborate well. And he's the one who taught me about the yes and that we talked about at the last session I spoke for. But he really explained the importance of thinking of things as a reward and not as a problem. He said you need to sort of invoke your brain's reward response. We want that dopamine hit by achieving this reward and quiet our threat response, our fight or flight that we might sort of get our backs up about a certain problem. That's how you can create advanced collaboration. If every individual thinks of achieving this reward and less of I got to protect my area or defend my bounds, less as a threat response, and that's where we're going to be able to achieve that advanced collaboration. And I'm a big geek about neuroscience and about how our brains work and how we deal with things and learn things. And he is absolutely right. We have two ways to focus, really, our brain. One, we can release norepinephrine, the fight flight. That's your threat response. That boosts your alertness so that you're ready to fight or flight, right? Or we can release dopamine, which is our joy chemical, the reward response. That boosts your interest level in whatever it is you're looking at or engaging in. So how do you emphasize interest over alertness? Really, I think a key to that is by knowing your group's strengths, by knowing what your own strengths are, and knowing how to really work together so that you and your team are all putting their best foot forward and are really working toward each of their own strengths. And how do you do that? Well, by knowing each other and by valuing your relationship with each of your team members or each of the people that you are working toward this vision with. So a good metaphor to kind of describe relationship is that it's like a bridge. It connects us together. It lets information flow back and forth, right? And information is, of course, knowledge, and that's where we're headed next. It's really difficult to share or receive knowledge without first having a relationship with someone. You know, would you share your Apple TV password with me? Probably not, right? We don't know each other well enough. But if we did get to know each other, maybe you would. So anyone message me and we'll talk. So I challenge you, my kind of call to action in terms of relationship is to spend 15 minutes today. It's not a long period of time, 15 minutes talking with somebody about something that's not work related. If you could do that with somebody that you're working on a project with right now, perhaps, you really will strengthen your relationship with them. And I'll bet you will learn something about them in terms of their strengths, and you'll learn how you can kind of think about that advanced collaboration with that particular person. So especially someone you don't know so well. That's my second call to action for you. Talk with somebody you don't know so well within your organization or within this network, perhaps. Okay, let's move on to knowledge in the West. And to start knowledge, I want to share a quick story, not a story, a quick teaching, really, of one of the most important teachers in my life. This man gifted me many, many teachings in my adult life and really as a youth as well. One of the things he was really the first person to coin was this concept that knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everybody. Anybody heard that before? Knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everybody. He also said, calling KRS guaranteed to rip a party. But no, he is so right. That's KRS-One. That's what that stands for. If you didn't know that, shout out to any 90s hip hop fans in here. But nothing is accomplished without knowledge and understanding. We can't create controls until we've assessed a hazard in health and safety. We can't implement corrective actions until we fully investigated an incident when it comes to health and safety. So without knowledge, our vision remains this lofty, unachievable idea. So knowledge really kind of provides the tools we may need to create a plan, to innovate, maybe overcome barriers that might have been there. It's like having a Swiss Army knife in your brain. You need to solve a problem, you just flip out whichever tool will achieve that particular problem you're dealing with. Let me ask you something. What do you think is more important? Gaining knowledge yourself or sharing knowledge with someone else? Throw it in the chat. Gaining or sharing? What do you think? Big ups, Amanda, being the first in there with sharing. Ooh, Caitlin, I like it. You fence sitter, you, Caitlin. Sharing is caring. Nice one. Let's see. Ooh, okay, we've got really a real back and forth grudge match here. Any other thoughts? Gaining versus sharing? Before I reveal my perspective. So personally, sharing, I believe, is more important. Sharing builds relationships as well, which is why it's such a great way to achieve things, right? Sharing builds collaboration, sharing builds unity, Plus, you get to show off how smart you are, right? Win-win. No, when we share knowledge, we start to create this sort of collective intelligence that's really stronger than any individual part. This shared wisdom between everybody trying to achieve something helps us to tackle whatever the problems are and really be creative and innovative and efficient. We really can form like a network where everyone's knowledge contributes to our end goal. And Bill Nye, who I think is an amazing individual, once said something that really resonates with me. Everyone you will ever meet knows something you don't. We can all learn something from each other. And it's really just approaching those conversations and relationships with an open mind so that you do learn that thing. Knowledge really grows our minds, even in our high-tech world. AI literally in our pockets, right? Continuous learning, knowledge sharing, still vital important. Our experiences and our understandings and our visions, our perspectives, our worldview, our truth really deepens our understanding of knowledge, right? When we can take a gem of knowledge and connect it to something else we know, that's when it really solidifies within us, right? We can understand the context of something. It's nice to know that, well, I have a colleague of mine that really says that health and safety is a profession of lifelong learning. And I really believe that's true. I am always learning things in health and safety, and especially since I've come to WSPS in the last few years, I've learned so much in these last few years, even compared to the first, 12, 13 years where I was doing health and safety at RAMA, because now I'm with all these individuals that have this professional capacity and competency in relation to health and safety. So there's much more knowledge sharing happening at this organization, even than when I was at RAMA in relation to health and safety. Knowledge is sort of like the guidebook that enriches your travel. So next time you hear a colleague say something, think to yourself, you know what? I need to learn more. Or maybe next time you hear a colleague say something, maybe you think, oh, I need to explain that to so-and-so. So this person would really benefit from this idea or this thing that I've just learned, That's how we kind of can explode out knowledge within our organizations through that sharing of the things that we've learned. So my other call to action is sometime, let's make it this week. I don't want to put everything on you in one day. Sometime this week, I want you to spend at least a half an hour either learning something new or sharing something you know with someone who doesn't know that. Not a team member maybe, but somebody else within your organization that you don't deal with regularly. That could be really beneficial. Talk to them a little bit about your role and what you do. That can go a long way to sort of create a cohesive organization and to really build that relationship. Everything comes back to relationship, doesn't it? Anyways, let's move on here. Final quadrant is, of course, action. So remember, we have a compass. We know where we're heading. We've built a bridge to get to that destination. And now we have a guidebook to help us understand what it's going to be like at that destination, perhaps. Right? That vision, relationship, knowledge. What's left? We just got to get into our car and drive there. But where do we begin? How do we know where to start in terms of this drive? Well, there's lots of approaches. Sharing circles is a common Anishinaabe approach. In the westernized world, we often think about, well, let's brainstorm all the things that we need to do, or brainstorm all the possible ways to achieve this particular vision or this particular project goal. And once we brainstorm those tasks, let's arrange them in proper order Maybe some are prioritized. Maybe if it's health and safety, some are based on risk, higher risk. We're going to spend more time on that. Or maybe there's a dependence in the order. So you have to do this X before you can work on Y. It's like playing Tetris, right? But less stress and more coffee in the workplace, perhaps. Now we want to assign responsibilities to the members of our team. Who is going to do these different tasks, these different things to achieve whatever it is we want to achieve? And we should be regularly checking in. And when you check in, it's important to measure progress and to look for barriers and gather feedback. But this is back to Deming's plan, do, check, act. This is really the checked so that we can act on our do. You didn't really think I dismissed plan, do, check, act, did you? This is really, if you think about it, this is how we are going to align with our vision, our relationship, and our knowledge. Through these regular interactions, we can compare what we're doing back to our vision. We're going to strengthen our relationship. There might be further knowledge gaining, knowledge sharing. So this is a dynamic medicine wheel teaching, just like all of them, right? But especially with this, the action really is about continuing around and around and around that visioning wheel. My slideshow froze. Thought it was a dramatic pause, didn't you? There it is. So, like hazard race, I'm not sure if you know hazard race, recognize, assess, control, evaluate, like plan, do, check, act. These are all wheels. It's a game of musical chairs, but we don't ever take a chair away. There's our car again. We're headed toward our destination. Right? The final call to action I have for you is to follow this visioning wheel for your next project, the next committee you form, the next sub team you create, your own personal goal that you want to achieve next. Follow this visioning wheel. So, any questions so far? Before I wrap it up here, I got a quick recap and wrap up, but let's pause for a moment in case there's anybody has any burning questions about the visioning wheel, about health and safety related to the visioning wheel. No questions for anybody? Well, it must not have been very very engaging then. Okay, well, let's recap it then. So remember, we got vision, relationship, knowledge, action. Well, actually, let's recap all the calls to action I've given to. So I said, write your own personal vision. Chat with a colleague for at least 15 minutes today. Maybe a colleague you don't know that well about something that's outside of work. Spend at least a half an hour this week gaining new knowledge or sharing some of your own knowledge with somebody else. And follow that visioning wheel next time you're trying to achieve anything. This is the way of the Anishinaabe. This is the way we did things for thousands of years, since traditional times. This is what true collaboration is about. This is what true community is about. Collaboratively create an inspiring vision, build a relationship by spending time together, being genuine, learning your strengths and weaknesses, gain or share any necessary knowledge, and action your ideas with regular check-ins so you can go back around that wheel as needed. And if you want to drive to that goal island, all you need, remember, is your compass, your bridge, your guidebook, and your car. So all I want to know is who's coming with me? Let's go. Buckle up. Miigwech, everybody. That's it for me.